Hi everyone, I'm Ashley. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I am going to be taking this solid pine wood dresser that I got for free from Facebook Marketplace, and it should have been because it was so incredibly damaged, and giving it a makeover so extreme that you're not even going to be able to recognize the before from the after. It's so cool. I'm so excited to share the process with you. I am going to be adding some fun fluted trim to the top drawers of this piece to really make it stand out. You know, these furniture flips that are so extreme, it's my favorite part of flipping furniture. Just the before and afters just shock me every time. So stick around to see how I give this one an extreme makeover. I picked this dresser up from a gentleman that posted it on Facebook Marketplace. From the pictures, I knew it was solid wood and, well, it was free, so why not? I wheeled it into my garage to start working on it, and after inspecting it closely, I realized there were chunks of missing wood on both the drawer fronts and on the side of the dresser. But that hasn't stopped me before. I turned it around to look at if there was a maker's mark on the back, and there was, but I couldn't really find much on it. And to be honest, this doesn't appear to be worth anything. It kind of looks homemade. So I usually start furniture flips out by giving it a nice deep clean, but decided to fix some structural issues with this one first because I knew design-wise I wanted to add some legs. But more importantly, I wanted to first remove that curved trim on the bottom of this dresser. So after I marked up where I wanted to cut, I just grabbed my jigsaw and cut off those edges. I also leveled off the sides of the dresser so that it would have a nice flat bottom where I could then add some legs to this piece. I'm only 5'2", so I had to grab a step stool to be able to cut off these sides. And then after I cut off at this side, I flipped over and did the same thing on the other side of this dresser. Afterwards, I flipped this dresser upside down to figure out how I could add the legs. There was almost zero support, so I needed to add some. I took a piece of wood that I had in my garage and cut it to size using my miter saw. And to be able to attach the piece of wood to the dresser, I needed to drill some pocket holes, and I used my Kreg tool. It is a fantastic tool to have if you work on furniture a lot, especially if you're building new furniture bases. This is a must-have. I'll link the one I use in the description below. It's actually the cheapest one you can get, but it works perfectly, and I've been using it for almost a year now, and I haven't had any issues with it, so highly recommend. To attach this new support to the dresser, I used some wood glue first and put a bead down where this new piece of wood will go, as well as on the side, and then use some Kreg screws and a drill to attach it to the dresser. Although this support would be fine, I wanted to ensure it was extra durable, so I used some scrap wood to glue and nail into each of the corners. You'll notice this is what the original makers of the dresser did for support as well on that other corner there, so I decided to mimic that on this as well. And now that that back support was done, I needed to add two pieces of wood where the legs would actually be screwed into. And I followed the same exact process using Kreg screws and glue to attach to both the front and back new support. Now that the new supports were installed, I was able to flip it back over because I did not have the legs yet. I ordered them from Amazon. I usually make them myself, but I didn't want to this time. So I'm going to flip it back over and start the cleaning process. This dresser was very, very dirty, so I just grabbed a bucket of water with some dish Dawn soap in it and went to town. I like to remove the hardware before cleaning the drawers because there is a lot of gunk under old hardware. Just like in this case, this is some pretty nasty stuff. So after cleaning, it was time to repair all those chunks of missing wood. I love using Bondo where there are large missing pieces like this. The reason is because Bondo dries incredibly hard, so it won't chip off like a wood filler would. There are a lot of different kinds of Bondo out there. For missing pieces like this, I like using the Bondo all-purpose putty. It dries harder and stronger in my opinion. After you mix the two parts together, it activates the chemicals in it, so you don't have long to work with it. You kind of got to go quickly. So I recommend only mixing small amounts at a time when working with this type of Bondo. I use a putty knife to apply in those missing areas. Here, I quickly realized I needed some tape on the back piece of this dresser to give the Bondo some shape. And just a little bit of structure to hold it in place while it dried. And I just use painter's tape here, and it holds it nicely, and you can remove it easily whenever Bondo dries. I mixed up some more Bondo to fill in those hardware holes because I am going to be using new hardware on this dresser, and I used the same technique to fill in that missing chunk from that dresser drawer that you saw earlier. After about 20 minutes, the Bondo had dried, so I removed the tape, and look at that nice straight line. I actually ended up having to need to go back in and fill in a little bit more after I sanded it smooth, but it overall did a really great job. And to sand Bondo, I typically use 120 grit sandpaper. You can kind of use whatever you want, to be honest. You're just trying to get it nice and smooth. I then moved on to the drawers and sanded that Bondo smooth. After all the drawers were sanded, I moved on to the body of the dresser, and my goal here is just to remove any chipping finish and create a surface that the primer can really adhere to. You'll hear it being called scuff sanding, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm scuffing up that surface so that the primer will really be able to grab onto it. It was finally time to move on to the trim. This part was actually the easiest part of the whole project. I bought this from Home Depot. I'll link it in the description below so you have it, but it is such a beautiful trim piece and relatively inexpensive. I first measure it to size and use my miter saw to make the cut. From there, I keep cutting the same size until I have enough to cover all of the drawers. If you are looking for your first tool to use, I would highly suggest a miter saw. It is so easy and it can do so much. I'll link mine below, and mine is actually right around $100, so super inexpensive. Once all of the pieces have been cut, I grab some wood glue and cover the surface using a chip brush. Wood glue is incredibly strong, so this is the only thing you'll need to use to attach it to the drawer fronts. Super easy process. Once all of the trim is attached and lined up, I grab a piece of wood and some wood clamps to hold it in place while it dries. After it dried, it was time to prime the dresser, but before priming, I use a tack cloth to remove any dust. I buy tack cloths in bulk because I use them on every project, and they pick up so much dust that just a normal cloth can't do. For the primer, I used a water-based primer in my paint sprayer. I added some water to thin it before spraying, but it clearly wasn't enough. I had it on max speed and it was barely coming out. I highly suggest testing out your paint before jumping straight into spraying on your furniture, but in this case, it still worked out fine, just took a little extra effort. After priming, it shows you where all of your repairs need to be. They stick out like a sore thumb. So I grabbed some wood filler and fill in each and every one of those cracks. It takes a little bit of time, but it's totally worth it to get that nice smooth surface. After the wood filler has dried, I sanded down using 220 grit sandpaper. Afterwards, I do another coat of primer to ensure that there won't be any bleed through. Anytime I'm painting in a light color, I do at least 2 coats of primer before paint. Before I painted, I wanted to fix the drawers. There were 3 issues with these drawers going on. The first was that it wiggled moving side to side when being pulled out, when it should just come straight out. To fix this, I just grabbed some drawer guides and some Gorilla Glue and attached it to those sides. The second issue was the drawers weren't gliding smoothly. You can use wax or a bar of soap, but I saw this gliding tape on Amazon and decided to give it a try. I can tell you that I will not be using a bar of soap anymore. This stuff is so great and easy to use. You just measure, cut with scissors, and apply, and these drawers glide so smoothly now. I just applied to the drawers itself, but you could actually apply to the runners on the inside of the dresser too, but it's not necessary because these glided smoothly without doing that. And finally, the third issue was that the drawers fell out when they were pulled. So I bought some drawer stoppers and installed them to each of the drawer openings to prevent the drawers from falling out all the way when they are opened. It was time to paint the dresser, so I grabbed one of my favorite furniture paints in an off-white color called Epiphany and strained the paint so that there were no lumps in it and sprayed it on. I didn't thin this paint out at all because it was already really thin and it sprays so nicely, especially with this HomeRite sprayer. This paint has a top coat in it, so I did not add a top coat after I painted it, but I did end up doing 2 coats on the base and 3 coats on the top. And to add the new hardware, I use a hardware jig. It's a great way to get consistent measurements and alignment for your new hardware. I like to line up my hardware and just adjust it so that it's in the center and put it on the drawer itself and drill your holes. It's as simple as that, and it makes drilling holes for hardware a lot less stressful. The legs finally arrived, so I flipped the dresser back over and marked off where the leg hardware should go, making sure that they were equal on both sides, and drilled the holes using a very large drill bit to fit the size that it was needed, and attached it. And it was finally done, but a quick reminder of what it looked like before to what it is now. I'm telling you what, this dresser is so dramatically different. And it looks like it's constantly smiling at me. You can't avoid looking at those two eyes and mouth. I think adding the fluted trim gives it a nice classic look, and adding the legs elevates it completely. I'd love to know what you think of this makeover. Please leave all your thoughts, comments, questions in the comments below, and I will answer any questions that you have. In this dresser, I also put some new hardware and some new drawer liners. I love adding drawer liners to dressers. It really just gives it a pop of color, and it helps brighten up the piece and just help sell the piece overall. It does take some time to install them, but I think it's totally worth the extra effort. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe for any more future furniture makeovers.